Hi everyone, Victoria Alai here. I'm the author of Guidebook Survival 101, a life navigator, and a self-help addict, which is what has gotten me to this abundant, prosperous life. So today what I'd like to talk about is the concept of abundance versus the fear mindset. And the reason that I'd like to talk about this is because of the fact that oftentimes when people are looking for careers or jobs, they start out thinking about the practical sides of the search, what to go into. They start thinking about, well, how much money can I make with this type of a career? Or is it located near my home? Or will it give me some kind of a leg up in a path? Are other people going to find that to be really prestigious? Those are the types of things we start thinking about. And what I've noticed as I've gone through, 5 dream jobs, as you know, this is my 6th dream job that I'm starting now, is that it was really the mindset that I had, the invisible types of needs that I had for security and feeling of being lovable, appreciated, validated, like I'm okay in the world. And it's really those thoughts of insecurity around food and shelter and that kind of thing. So what I would like to do today is talk about how to move from the fearful scarcity type of thinking into an abundance type of thinking, and how that gives you a really good foundation for actually being open enough to find your passion and make it happen. Because I am a believer, like the book says, that if you do what you love, the money will follow and you will have abundance in your life. And that has been my experience at many different levels of income. So let's start off talking about fear and scarcity as a way of thinking. And to me, also the word deprivation comes into mind, because I can actually physically feel when I'm in this kind of thinking. And I remember back when I was in college, I had had a few jobs growing up, which was excellent because it showed me that excitement of being able to work and gain some money and be able to buy myself lunch or clothing or whatever. I still didn't have to pay for rent, but what happened in college was my dad was going through a rough time. When I first got to college, he could afford to support me there. And then, within the first 2 or 3 weeks, his circumstances changed dramatically. It was a crazy time in the early 80s, and, interest rates were 17, 18%, and he was in real estate. And all of a sudden, he and his buddies had to give up a lot of their houses. And I digress a little bit, but a lot of their investments had to go to the wayside and get turned back into the bank. And so he went into this emergency mode, which means that within 2 or 3 weeks of starting school, I went into an emergency mode, and I wasn't even working. I was just doing school as my freshman year. And I panicked because he basically said, I can't afford to send you money. So then what did I do? I started to get practical, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But I ended up going for help at financial aid, and they immediately jumped into action and helped me. I ended up getting a job in the dish room at the dorm and working off my room and board and that kind of thing. But I can tell you right now that when it first happened, I was feeling in deep level fear, scarcity. And it wasn't just about the fear of how do I stay in school? It was the fear of, without school, what do I do? I mean, that was the fear that I had. And I had no guidance on how to get through school and pay for it yourself. So it was definitely, thank God, these wonderful people at the college, but it was also my ability to reach out. One of the mindsets that I had, that I got from this, was that there were few resources. There was just not enough to go around. And that was my mindset. I also was afraid in work in general. In college, there was a shrinking pie. Somehow I got this idea, maybe from my mom. She worked in early childhood, which was basically high-level poverty type of work for quite a while until she got work with the school district. But I think because of that background of, growing up in some poverty myself, I had this belief that this was a shrinking pie and that I had to try to get a bigger piece of this shrinking pie before it disappeared. Kind of reminds me of the, value of some of our world currencies right now. And so one of my coping mechanisms would be going out, having fun with friends, drinking alcohol, going out on dates, things like that. And these types of things would kind of give me an escape from my daily fears. But when this did happen, where my dad kind of crashed financially in his 40s, and I was there trying to figure out how to scramble and stay in college because I didn't know what else to do, that's when the survival mindset actually did start to kick in. And one of the keys that I have found over my life of career of 5+ different, careers or fields is that the first step towards moving from fear to abundance is going into the survival mindset, a real practical, focused on visible needs type of survival mindset. So what I did, not just that first year, but after that, was I started breaking down my life into very simple blocks. Okay, what's the first thing I need? First thing I need is food. And actually, the first thing I needed at that time, because food was provided at that dorm and they weren't kicking me out yet, the first thing I needed to figure out was housing. How am I going to stay in this dorm? And so when I went to financial aid, they said, well, why don't you try to get a job working in the dish room, and they will pay not only your room and board, but they'll give you a little bit of a stipend on top of that, a little bit of extra cash. And so that's what I did. And immediately they hired me, thank goodness, into the dorm dish room. And a lot of people might think, oh my God, what kind of a job is that? Isn't that like a waste of your time? That's not a real job. But I'll tell you what, there's another principle I learned at that job, and that is whatever job I have at the time that is helping me with my housing and my food is the real job, and I'm going to do the best I can at that job. And I did. And believe it or not, I ended up finding a type of meditation in that job, which was really helpful. And I learned tolerance in that job. Like, well, you got to sometimes sling a bunch of food and off of these plates. And then I also learned a lot about how to be of service to people. I remember, especially because somehow along the line, I ended up being the person scooping ice cream. And believe me, they do ice cream every single day in college dorms, it seems like. And maybe they have a different machine today. That was a really neat experience because people would come by and I just offer a smile at the same time. And see, these are the types of skills that will help me in any career in my life. So it was not a waste of time to have that job. So that's what happened is I ended up being able to stay there in that dorm, and then financial aid helped me with some grants. Within a year, I was able to move out on my own and prove independence, and then I got even more financial aid and didn't have to take on as many student loans. Now, I know this might be details, but I'm trying to give you an idea of the fact that whatever life hands you, if you just break down these different needs into separate blocks, and in my case, I had to cover the housing and the food first. And this happened to me over and over again. When I was out there living with a friend and 5 different people in a house, I didn't have as much money, and so I knew about going to the food bank for food. And then my friend's family was paying for her college, and so what we would do is I would go to the food bank, go and get food that we needed there, and then whatever we needed to fill in, we'd take her money from her parents and go fill that in. And so again, look at what we're doing. We're not just trying to do this by ourselves and handle the whole thing. We actually helped each other. And not only that, we went to organizations, financial aid, agencies that were creating these food banks. And this type of survival thinking helped as well with transportation. I could have gotten, and at one time I did have a little kind of beater car or lemon car when I was in college, and somebody ran into the back of it and totaled it, and I couldn't afford to get another car. And one of the best things happened, I found out about bus passes that you can get that cover an entire region. And so that was really helpful for me to realize that, well, I can pay $500 or $600 a month to maintain my car with gas and maintenance and car payment, or at least $200 or $300. This is back in the day. I'm sure it's different now, and your currency may be different. But the idea was that, what can I do to have abundance? So even though I made very little money, I mean, that first year I was independent, I think I made $5,000, and that included student loans. And that had to pay for all my college and everything, and I'm dating myself now. But you get the idea. So survival, being able to learn, how do I get my food? How do I get my clean water? How do I have a good place to take a shower and have sanitation? How do I find a way to get transportation? How do I get clothing? And these are all things that you can find. I mean, you can go into a lot of thrift stores, especially, these charity stores, like from different churches, and say, look, I am busted. I need XYZ. Can you help me? Sometimes they'll just give you a bag and say, fill it up. And other times they'll say, yeah, fill up a bag for $5 or something like that. So just remember, if you're basically moving from scarcity and fear into survival, the way that I ended up getting abundance or a firm foundation to build that abundance is by asking for help and going places and not doing it on my own. And this is called interdependence, which we'll talk about later. That's a Stephen Covey concept from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And again, being a self-help addict, you can imagine that I've certainly read that program and done that program multiple times. Okay, so the last concept we want to talk about is, so how do we get to the abundance mindset? What is the abundance mindset? Well, for me, the abundance mindset ends up being this whole feeling that all is well. That's the base, that's the bottom line. All is well in my life, in the world. It helps not to watch the news. And there's another concept that has really helped me move into the abundance mindset, and that is that there is enough for all. Instead of the scarcity mindset of that, there's not enough to go around, I actually take the opposite mindset, that there's enough for all. And not just enough for all to survive, which is a great starting point, but enough for everybody to thrive in the entire world. And this is what I choose to believe. And so that is my personal mission, my husband's mission. That is the mission here at Everyone Counts, is to make sure that everyone in the world that is available and wants to live this abundant, prosperous life can live this abundant, prosperous life. And by the way, I've had abundance at $10,000 a year in college, barely making it, 9,000, 7,000, and then I've had abundance with a lot more income than that, and everywhere in between. And so abundance and prosperity is not just about, oh, I'm wealthy and I own 5 yachts. There are a lot of people with those 5 yachts that still feel there's a hole inside and they don't have enough. They're competing with their friends. True freedom is to get to that point of survival where all my basic needs are met, and then get into the launch pad with that and move into the abundance mindset, which is being rocketed into another dimension. And it's very possible, I believe, for every single one of you out there. In closing, a couple of things that I would suggest, no matter where you are in this process, is to get to that place of base survival and then give yourself a blank canvas on which to paint your future. And one of the tools that I've learned along the way is, if I happen to have a job, even if it is working in fast food, even if it is working in an office, even if it is being a CEO and it's not for me anymore. And I have been a CEO before of a small startup, and this is another co-founder situation I'm in right now. So no matter where you're at, no matter where you're headed, getting that firm foundation is important. So you may need to get a job or get some kind of an income or a secured loan against your car in order to make it until you get the job that you really want. And the number one thing that I learned along the way is to not give up my day job until I have another job. That's been one of the principles that has helped me. But there have been times during layoffs and other times when I have been able to just focus either on starting a business or on looking for a dream job and not having to work during that time. So it really depends on your circumstances. But if you don't have the money to live without a day job, don't give up a day job. That's my experience anyway. That's not advice. That's just something that I've experienced, is to consider not giving up your day job. Treat it like a real job until you're clearing your belongings out of that job. And the second thing then is, don't just jump into something that you think you might like next, because as you start climbing that ladder for a new position or a new job, then oftentimes it takes on a momentum of its own, and it gets distracting. You don't give yourself the chance to actually look and see where your heart really is, where your mind really is, where your goals really are. And so what I suggest is that you give yourself this gift of a blank page, blank canvas, And one of the things that has really helped me and that you might want to consider is on that blank canvas, start writing down, if fear wasn't an object, if money wasn't a problem, if I could wave a magic wand and I would get my dream job, what would it be? And you start thinking like that, like completely out of the box, no barriers, no fears of knowledge or educational opportunities, and just give yourself that blank page, because you won't have that chance when you start another job or career or business. And that's basically what has helped me. So I'm really glad we had a chance to talk today. Please take time to put your thoughts about what we've been talking about in the comments down below, and also let me know what other topics you might be interested in hearing about. Today we're talking about career, but it could be relationships. It could be, how do you get a sense of validation? It could be, how do you get housing? Whatever it is, let me know what your thoughts are. And in the meantime, I'm wishing you health, happiness, and prosperity in every area of your life. Until we meet again, take care.